At 63 years old, Tom Cruise is still one of the biggest movie stars on the planet. He's still running across rooftops, still hanging off airplanes, still risking his life for scenes most actors wouldn't even attempt. On the outside, he looks unstoppable. But recently, something unexpected happened. In a quiet moment, far away from red carpets and movie premieres, Tom said something that caught people off guard. "She was the love of my life." That's not something you usually hear from him. For decades, Tom Cruise has protected his private life. He doesn't talk much about his marriages. He doesn't explain his heartbreaks. He moves on, stays focused on work, and keeps his emotions behind a wall. So when he said that, people immediately started asking one question: who is she? Over the years, Tom has been married 3 times. He's loved some of the most famous women in the world. His relationships played out in front of cameras, tabloids, and non-stop public judgment. There was passion. There was glamour. There were shocking breakups that made global headlines. From his early days as a rising Hollywood star, to his intense marriage with Nicole Kidman, to the very public romance with Katie Holmes, every chapter of his love life has been watched, analyzed, and picked apart. But love isn't simple. Especially not when you're one of the most famous men alive. Behind the movie premieres and magazine covers, there were real feelings, real fights, real heartbreak, and choices that changed everything. Now, at 63, Tom Cruise seems to be looking back, not as the action hero, not as the movie star, but as a man who once loved deeply and lost. Was he talking about Nicole? Was it someone else the public never fully understood? Or was it a love story that ended too soon? By the end, you'll understand why, after all these years, one woman still stands above the rest in his heart. By the mid-1980s, Tom Cruise wasn't just another young actor trying to make it. After Risky Business and then Top Gun, he had officially become a star. Studios wanted him. Directors trusted him. Teenage girls had his posters on their walls. But off-screen, Tom was still searching for something steady. Fame came fast. Money came fast. Attention came fast. And when that happens, a lot of young actors spin out of control. That's when Mimi Rogers entered his life. Mimi was older than Tom by about 6 years. She had already been around Hollywood. She wasn't new to the industry. She wasn't impressed by fame. People who knew them back then said she seemed calm, grounded, and confident. Tom, on the other hand, was ambitious and intense. He worked non-stop. He thought non-stop. He planned non-stop. They met in the mid-1980s. The connection moved quickly. Very quickly. By 1987, they were married. To the public, it seemed surprising. Tom was the new golden boy of Hollywood. Mimi wasn't as famous. She didn't fit the typical power couple image. But insiders said Tom admired her maturity. She gave him structure. She challenged him. She didn't treat him like a superstar. There was another major part of their relationship that would follow Tom for the rest of his life. Mimi introduced him to Scientology. She had grown up around it. Her father had deep ties to the church. When Tom met her, he was still figuring out his identity. He had struggled with dyslexia. He had dealt with a difficult father. He was driven, but he also carried insecurity. Scientology offered answers. It offered control. It offered tools for improvement. Tom embraced it seriously. Over time, his involvement deepened, and that connection would later shape his relationships, his public image, and even his divorces. At first, though, Tom and Mimi seemed solid. They appeared at events together. They gave interviews. But behind closed doors, things weren't simple. Tom's career was exploding. Every year brought bigger roles, bigger paychecks, bigger expectations. Fame changes people, especially when it happens that fast. The power dynamic in their marriage slowly shifted. Tom was no longer just a rising actor. He was becoming one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood. There were whispers that Mimi struggled with that. Some said she felt pushed aside as his world grew larger and louder. Others said Tom was changing, becoming more controlled, more private, more focused on image. In interviews years later, Mimi hinted that the marriage wasn't as perfect as it looked. She once suggested that Tom cared deeply about how he was perceived. That public image mattered to him a lot. By 1990, after just 3 years of marriage, it was over. The divorce announcement shocked fans, but it was handled quietly. No public fighting. No dramatic press conferences. Just a short statement. Soon after the split, Tom began filming Days of Thunder. And that's where everything changed. That's where he met someone who would completely shift the course of his life. But before that new chapter began, his marriage to Mimi left something behind. It was his first experience of building a life with someone and watching it fall apart. It was the first time he learned that success doesn't protect you from heartbreak. And it was the first time the world realized that Tom Cruise's personal life might be more complicated than his movie roles. When Tom Cruise walked onto the set of Days of Thunder, he was already one of the biggest stars in the world. Fresh off his divorce from Mimi Rogers, he was focused on work. That's how he dealt with things. He buried himself in filming. Then he met Nicole Kidman. Nicole was tall, quiet, and not intimidated by him. She was still early in her career, especially in Hollywood. She had an Australian accent that stood out. On set, people noticed something right away. There was real chemistry. Not the fake, promotional kind. The kind where two people look at each other a little longer than they need to. Tom later admitted he felt something almost instantly. By the end of 1990, they were married. It moved fast. Very fast. But that was Tom's pattern. When he fell hard. 4 years, they looked like the perfect Hollywood couple. Red carpets, award shows, magazine covers. They adopted 2 children together, Isabella and Connor. They built a life that looked stable from the outside. They also worked together again, including in Eyes Wide Shut, directed by Stanley Kubrick. That film took over 2 years to complete. It was intense. Long hours. Emotional scenes about jealousy and marriage. Some people later wondered if playing a troubled couple on screen blurred into real life. Behind closed doors, their careers were both demanding. Nicole's fame grew. She wasn't just Tom Cruise's wife. She was earning respect on her own. Awards, critical praise, lead roles. That shift changed things. For a long time, Tom had been the bigger star. Now Nicole was rising fast. Some insiders said that created tension. Others pointed to Tom's deep involvement with Scientology. Reports later claimed Nicole wasn't fully comfortable with how serious it had become. Then, in 2001, after more than a decade together, the news hit. Tom filed for divorce. It shocked Hollywood. Nicole later said she didn't see it coming. She described feeling blindsided. There were rumors about many things. Pressure from Scientology, career conflicts, control issues. But neither of them ever fully explained the real reason publicly. The divorce was finalized quickly. After it was over, Nicole gave interviews where she sounded hurt but composed. Tom, on the other hand, became even more private. He didn't open up about it, but people close to them have said something important over the years. That relationship was different. It wasn't just glamorous. It wasn't just publicity. They had built a family. They had grown up together in many ways. They had shared more than red carpets. And when it ended, something shifted in Tom. He never looked quite as emotionally open in public again. After the divorce from Nicole Kidman, Tom didn't stay single for long. He met Penelope Cruz while filming Vanilla Sky. The movie was emotional and strange, filled with themes of love and loss. Off camera, their connection slowly grew. Unlike his past relationships, this one started quietly. Penelope wasn't loud about it. Tom wasn't either. They avoided dramatic public displays. No jumping on couches. No flashy announcements. They just dated. For about 3 years they were together. Friends described the relationship as warm and respectful. Penelope spent time around his children. They traveled together. It looked steady. But something was missing. By 2004 they split. The official explanation was busy schedules. That's the standard Hollywood answer. But insiders hinted at deeper differences. There were reports that Penelope wasn't interested in becoming deeply involved in Scientology. Others said Tom was still emotionally carrying the weight of his divorce from Nicole. Whatever the reason, it ended without drama. This period of Tom's life felt different. He wasn't the newlywed. He wasn't part of a golden Hollywood marriage. He wasn't publicly heartbroken either. He just kept working. The Mission Impossible franchise became his anchor. Every few years, another massive action film. Bigger stunts. Bigger box office numbers. He seemed more focused than ever on being Tom Cruise the movie star, rather than Tom Cruise the husband. Then, in 2005, everything shifted again. This time, it wouldn't be quiet. This time, the whole world would watch. And this time, the story would explode in a way no one expected. In 2005, Tom Cruise met Katie Holmes. Katie had grown up in the spotlight from the TV show Dawson's Creek. She was younger than Tom by 16 years. She had once openly said in interviews that she had a crush on him when she was a teenager. So when news broke that they were dating, people were stunned. But no one was prepared for what happened next. In May 2005, Tom appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show. During the interview, he jumped on Oprah's couch, laughing and pumping his fists in the air, shouting about how in love he was. It went everywhere. News channels replayed it non-stop. Late-night shows made jokes. Some people thought it was sweet. Others thought it was strange. For the first time, Tom's carefully controlled image cracked in public. Just weeks later, he publicly confirmed his relationship with Katie. By June, he proposed to her at the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Everything was moving fast. Again. Later that year, they announced they were expecting a baby. In 2006, their daughter, Suri, was born. That same year, Tom and Katie got married in a lavish ceremony in Italy. From the outside, it looked like a fairy tale. Beautiful wedding. Gorgeous photos. A new baby. A movie star husband. But the media pressure was intense. There were non-stop headlines about Scientology. Questions about how Katie was adjusting. Reports that she had become more isolated from old friends. Stories about contracts and strict rules. Some of it may have been exaggerated. Some of it may not have been. What's clear is this. The relationship was under a microscope from day one. Tom defended his beliefs publicly and passionately. Sometimes too passionately. His interviews became more serious. More intense. He criticized psychiatry in a famous TV argument. His popularity dipped for the first time in years. Behind closed doors, the marriage was changing. By 2012, after 6 years of marriage, something unexpected happened. Katie filed for divorce. It was fast. Shockingly fast. Within days, reports said Tom was blindsided. Within weeks, the divorce was settled. Katie was granted primary custody of Suri. The speed of it all told its own story. There were no public fights. No messy court drama. Just silence. After that, Tom rarely spoke about Katie again. He rarely spoke about Suri publicly either. Their relationship became private, almost invisible to the public eye. And just like that, his third marriage was over. 3 marriages. 3 divorces. By the time he was 50, Tom Cruise had already lived through more public heartbreak than most people do in a lifetime. After the divorce from Katie Holmes, something shifted in Tom. He stopped sharing his private world almost completely. No more public declarations of love. No more dramatic interviews about relationships. No red carpet kisses that made headlines for weeks. Instead, he focused on one thing: work. The Mission Impossible franchise became bigger than ever. Each movie raised the stakes. Hanging off planes. Climbing skyscrapers. Riding motorcycles off cliffs. He performed his own stunts, even into his 50s and 60s. People started saying the same thing. He's married to his career. He rarely addressed his past marriages in interviews. When asked about Nicole Kidman or Katie Holmes, he kept it short and respectful. No details. No emotion. Just polite answers. There were rumors over the years. Reports that he dated quietly. Speculation about actresses and assistants. But nothing official. Nothing confirmed. He attended premieres alone. Award shows alone. At the same time, Nicole Kidman rebuilt her life. She married country singer Keith Urban and had children. Katie Holmes raised Suri largely out of the spotlight. Life moved on. Tom, meanwhile, became more mysterious. The older he got, the more focused he seemed. Less distracted. Less emotional in public. And yet, in rare interviews, when his past came up, there was sometimes a flicker. A small pause. Especially when Nicole's name was mentioned. They had been together for more than a decade. They had adopted children. They had built a real home together during the peak of his fame. Years passed. Then decades. Now, at 63, when Tom quietly says, "She was the love of my life," people listen differently. Because when someone who almost never looks back finally does, it means something. Now Tom Cruise is 63. Still running. Still filming. Still pushing his body like a man half his age. But recently, during a quiet interview while promoting another installment of the Mission Impossible franchise, something shifted in his tone. He wasn't talking about stunts. He wasn't talking about box office numbers. He was asked about his life, his past, love, and that's when he said it. "She was the love of my life." He didn't shout it. He didn't smile dramatically. It wasn't a performance. It was calm, almost reflective. For a man who has spent decades avoiding emotional headlines, it stood out. He didn't immediately say her name. But he didn't really need to. People started connecting the dots. He wasn't likely talking about Mimi Rogers. Their marriage was short, and it happened before his life fully exploded. It didn't feel like he meant Katie Holmes either. That relationship was intense, public, dramatic, but it didn't carry the same long history. The name that kept coming up was Nicole Kidman. When you look at the timeline, it makes sense. They were together for over 10 years. In Hollywood terms, that's a lifetime. They adopted 2 children together. They grew through their 30s side by side. She stood next to him during the height of his fame in the 1990s. They weren't just a publicity couple. They built a real family. Over the years, Tom has rarely spoken about Nicole in detail. But when he has, his words were always respectful. Once, long after their divorce, he said, "She knows why." That was his only explanation about the split. No blame. No bitterness in public. Nicole, on her side, admitted the divorce broke her heart. She once said she thought they would be together forever. People close to them have said something similar for years, that the divorce hit deeper than Tom ever let on. And now, decades later, when he looks back at his life, the fame, the success, the awards, the risks, maybe he's thinking about the one person who shared the most years with him during the most important time of his life. He never confirmed it directly. But sometimes what someone doesn't say speaks just as loudly. At 63, Tom Cruise is still one of the last true movie stars. He doesn't rely on social media drama. He doesn't do tell-all interviews. He shows up, does the work, and disappears again. His life today is structured, controlled, focused on filming schedules, training, travel, and production meetings. Meanwhile, Nicole Kidman built a different kind of life. She married Keith Urban and created a quieter, family-centered world. Katie Holmes stepped away from blockbuster fame and focused on raising Suri privately. Tom's relationship with his older adopted children, Isabella and Connor, appears steady. They've stayed connected through the years. His relationship with Suri has remained mostly out of the public eye. What stands out now is how alone he appears publicly. No long-term partner. No red carpet romance. No public declarations. Just work. Some people say he chose career over love. Others say love simply didn't survive the pressure of his world. The fame, the belief system, the constant spotlight. But when he says, "She was the love of my life," it feels less like regret and more like acknowledgement. Maybe he's not trying to reopen the past. Maybe he's just being honest for once. At 63, after 3 marriages, global fame, billions at the box office, and decades in the spotlight, he's finally allowing himself to say that one relationship mattered more than the others. And maybe that's the most human thing he's done in years. Because behind the action hero, behind the box office numbers, behind the carefully managed image, there's still a man who once fell deeply in love and never completely erased it.